Don't just work in your business, work on your business.
I'd love to hear your perspective on why get involved in a Practicum program in the first place, but what do you see as some of the advantages in going that direction?
Because I think this is the best job on the planet. How many jobs are out there that your client pays you for telling them what you think?
What is your management and day-to-day involvement in these businesses?
I learned so much from others, even if they're not on stage teaching a class. You want to work for yourself and be your own boss. I'm not going to discourage anyone, guys, from doing what I've done.
Episode 97 of the award-winning Market Moves with Mark and Jeff, two uninteresting guys talking about interesting times, Jeff. We have mortgage rates at 6.85%. They are rising. We have mortgage applications declining. We have appraiser populations declining. We have UAD 3.6 on the come here in November and barreling down on us quickly. It seems like it is time to have someone quite a bit more interesting than us and have a very broad view of the market to come on the podcast here and talk to us a little bit about what on earth we should be doing to make sense of all of this. What do you think here, Jeff?
Yeah, well, great setup, Mark. There's room for a lot of negativity, and you don't have to look beyond, Facebook groups and online forums to find a lot of that negativity. Nobody needs appraisers. The 3.6 is going to put us out of work. I'm quitting before I start, before it gets here. Lots of negativity out there. And I think you and I have a bit of a different perspective than, maybe what prevails on the online forums. In our quest to bring interesting aspects to the topics, we'd like to bring interesting people in to talk. And if you're anywhere in or around the appraisal and the valuation space, I can't imagine you wouldn't have heard not only the name, but also the golden voice of Bryan Reynolds. He's been good enough to be willing to join us here, and someone I've known and just looked up to for a long time. Some of the first appraisal conferences I've been to, Bryan's been at and speaking, having a presence. I literally have heard people sitting next to me in these conferences saying, is that guy like a preacher or something? He sounds like he could be preaching a sermon on Sunday. But Bryan, we really appreciate you joining us and being here with us today.
Mark, Jeff, thank you very much for the invite. It's my honor. You guys are doing great, and congratulations. He said episode 97. You're almost to the 100 mark. Congratulations on your success. I'm excited for you both.
Yeah, I think do the first 1,000 episodes and then look up and assess where you are, I think is the only way we can get through this right now. It does speak to just doing, and saying, hey, I think this would be a good idea. You got to let it play out for a long time here to see how worthwhile the endeavor is. But thank you very much for joining. We were setting this up, Bryan, with all the turmoil and uncertainty in and around our space. And I didn't even mention artificial intelligence that you could be throwing in this. And it is just a wild world out there. And Jeff and I were talking this morning kind of in show prep, and you have such a broad view, and you seem to be kind of putting your money where your mouth is, with a lot of interests in a lot of areas around the valuation space. And maybe set up for the viewers a little bit about those different interests and where you have things set up. And you would love to first be diving into how you view the space and the prospects of it over the next several years.
Yeah. Well, with the setup, with the doom and gloom you were talking about, and you're right, you can find that, get a bunch of appraisers together, and there'll be no shortage of that conversation for sure. But I want to go back in time a little bit. And if we go back 21 years ago, there was a hot topic. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac decided to revise the form we were using. And appraisers went crazy. Don't change it. I like putting what the interior door is made of, right? We as human beings, we get in a routine. We like things the way they are. And this isn't just appraisers. This is human beings in general.
Yep.
We like our routine. And anytime there's a change in that routine, we don't like it. I ask people, what's the first thing you do in the morning when you wake up? Both of you, what's the first thing you do, Mark?
What is the first thing I do? I just pull up my phone, I think, sadly.
Phone, of course. Jeff, what about you?
I try to avoid the phone other than turn off the alarm. I typically get up, get something to drink, and force myself out the door to work out before.
What do you drink?
Before I
I'm
get
just
busy.
curious. What's that first drink you have?
Ooh, that's a good question. Usually an energy drink, a Zip Fizz, has
Okay.
energy and
All right.
caffeine and stuff to get me going.
So, Mark, if you woke up this morning and you picked up your phone and it wasn't working, and you're like, I forgot to charge it. You try and charge it, and it's dead. I mean, you don't have a phone. Would you have a new phone by tomorrow?
Yeah, I think I would.
Yeah. And Jeff, if you went to the fridge to get that energy drink and it wasn't there, what would you do?
I would be hunting to find one for sure. I'd have one by tomorrow.
Okay, probably drink some. You guys are in that routine. That's your comfort zone, and we're kind of repetitive creatures. We're creatures of comfort, and anytime that apple cart gets turned over, we kind of have a knee-jerk reaction. So if you think back 21 years ago when they revised the form, there were a lot of appraisers that were upset, frustrated. I'm going to get out of the business. When FHA changed their protocol and they said, now you're going to have to check electrical outlets and do this and this and this. A lot of FHA appraisers say, I'm not going to assume that liability. People think I'm going to be a home inspector. I'm out of this. When Fannie Mae adopted ANSI not that long ago, there was a big pushback on that. This is horrible. This is the worst thing ever. And now, of course, we see what UAD 3.6, the kind of conversations we've had about that. That being said, we also are creatures that can adjust. And I think with all these changes I've talked about in the past, it has been adjustment. And generally speaking, the changes, once you adopt, becomes your new routine, and you get a new comfort level with that. And it's not so earth-shattering as you thought it would be. You guys may be around that at that time when the old form, we used to type it on a typewriter, and then it came out on the dot matrix that you had to line it up. Then it went to LaserJet, but that was a pre-printed form for a typewriter. We needed to get rid of that a long time ago. So I think that we will adjust. Will we maybe lose some folks along the way? Absolutely. There's no question. But I think for the most part, appraisers will adjust. We're good at solving problems. That's what we do. We solve problems, in particular value problems. And I think most appraisers will adjust and move on and ultimately be better than they were before. Now, you ask about my verticals. As you know, I'm a partner in Appraiser e-learning. We provide continuing education across the country. We own Expo, which is coming up real quickly. And we partner with the National Association of Appraisers and 2 other conferences. So we're appraisal educator as well as a conference owner and co-host now. And we really love doing that. I have my own appraisal company still, Reynolds and Associates. And I have one that we pretty much changed the name on that one now, Fine Point Valuation. It's still technically around. It's based in Nashville. And yes, to Mark's point, I've written some checks lately, and that's tough to do. But I just bought into another appraisal company over in Western Kentucky, and we're regional, trying to grow. We're looking for appraisers. We're looking for trainees. We're looking for folks wanting to enter the profession, and that's Legacy Appraisal and Consulting. And then we've done a spinoff of that and created another company that, again, I had to stroke a check for. I'm out of money now. so I hope some of these pay off. But that is the Practicum. We have what's called LAC Appraiser Pathway, and it's an opportunity for someone that wants to be an appraiser. It's an alternative pathway for them to get their appraisal license.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that you're out of money, Brian. I had a really good sales pitch set up for you to see if you were still in the mode of stroking checks or not. But on that topic, I mean, certainly, you feel it. I've been there too. You feel it when you write that check to something, that says, I have faith in this. I think there's something here that can come of it. I'm going to put some money behind it because of that. What is it that you see about the appraisal space and the future of that gives you confidence to, to write those checks, so to speak, or to, kind of double down? What's your outlook on it?
Well, I do think we are an aging profession. I had a gentleman call me this week, and he was, I think I sold him and his wife a house a few years back. And he was asking me about a real estate coordinator. He's in technology. He works at home, but he has time. And I think he's concerned with AI of his current job. And he said, I was thinking about exploring and seeing if there's opportunity for kind of like a real estate coordinator or an assistant or an admin to a real estate agent, and probably foster that out to many. And I'm like, well, Ryan, I'd probably hire you, because that's the aspect I don't like to. if I do real, and I don't do a lot of real estate now, but I could. And as we got to talking, appraising came up, and he started doing research, Jeff, while we were on the phone. And he said, well, I didn't know this, but I just learned the average age of an appraiser is in their 60s now. And he said, and it looks like the majority of them are in their 60s. And he's like, so we had a conversation. And yes, I wouldn't be stroking checks, as we say, if I thought this business wasn't going to be around anymore. Is it going to change? Absolutely. A change is inevitable. If you don't believe that, look in the mirror. Most things change, right? And so it's going to change. But I do think, especially with my conversation with Ryan, there's going to be folks retiring. There's going to be folks dying. And there's going to be folks just wanting to get out of the business because they're frustrated or they're ready to move on to do something else. For those of us that stay in, I see that as a bigger opportunity. And I know you guys do, and I do as well. And most of my listeners on my podcast, I assume a big majority of yours, are in the mortgage finance world, right? They're doing appraisals for purchase transactions or refinances, or maybe foreclosures. There might be some REO appraisers out there, or relocation appraisers, but there's a whole world out there on the other side. And what I've kind of preached for many, many years is think about diversifying your practice, because regardless, I mean, Mark was talking about the interest rates and applications and things of that nature. Well, guess what? People are going to die no matter what the interest rates are.
Yeah.
They're going to build roads and widen roads no matter what the interest rates are. People are going to get divorced no matter what the interest rates are. So there's a whole sea of work out there available that might be non-lender work. And granted, some folks might say, I don't want to go do court work. I get it. Again, that opens a door of opportunity even wider for those of us that are willing to take that type of work. So I think we're around for a long, long time. I don't think AI is going to replace us. I think it will help us do our job better. But ultimately, I see a long, long future for appraisers in this country.
Well, I think I see it the same way, and I hope it's not just wishful thinking on my part. And I don't think it is. I think what you've laid out really are the demographics and the dynamics out there in the space right now. One of the things that I've come across and that has really resonated is, Darwin, in talking about evolution, identifies it's not the strongest of the species. It's not even the smartest of the species that survives. It is literally the most adaptable, the one that is most able to adapt to its environment and the changes around. And I think that holds true in business generally, not just for appraisers or even in real estate professionals, but things change. Like you said, I mean, I look in the mirror, and increasingly that's a depressing proposition. It's maybe one of the things I do fewer times in the morning than I used to in the past. But the change is inevitable. So you can either choose to reject it, resist it, or adapt with it. And I think that is the proper approach in business and in life, is to be adaptive and adaptable. You mentioned, Bryan, artificial intelligence, and briefly, the outlook isn't that you don't think that it's going to be replacing appraisers. I'm curious, are you using it in your practice, or what's your outlook on maybe the proper marriage between appraisers, evaluation, and AI? Yeah.
I've said for a long, long time, guys, that an appraiser should run their office like Chick-fil-A. If you think about Chick-fil-A for a minute, they run a lot of cars through that line, but they don't jeopardize quality, right? I go through and my food is correct. It's hot. It's what I ordered. And there were 30 cars in front of me and I still got through the line in 10 minutes. Well, how do they do that? They do that two ways. Number one, they use technology. I mean, they don't even wait till you get to the order box out in the parking lot now. They have people prior to that walking around with an iPad taking your order. And then the other way is a workforce. So in my businesses, I utilize both. I use technology and we have a workforce. I've done it by myself and maybe I'm just tired. I don't want to do it by myself anymore. But, and that's what I talked to, individual thinking about joining our team. I said, look, when's the last time you had a vacation? Because the typical appraiser out there works day and night. They work on the weekends. They have flexibility and they can make good money, but it's hard to take a day off. And God forbid you want to take a week vacation. What do you taking your laptop with you and you're working? Well, this advisory opinion came out. I didn't even know y'all were going to ask about this, but I don't know if y'all spoke about this yet, but it's advisory opinion 41. It's the use of technology in appraisal review. To answer your question, yes, I do utilize AI. I use some in my business here. Legacy is using it a lot. And I've got a operations manager over there who's a partner as well, Andy Miller, who is just a guru in that area. And every time I turn around, he's created a new technology, and he works very closely with an IT guy to make sure that we're everything's secure and it's exclusive to us, and it's not getting out there in the world, which is part of the concern I know for folks that just type something in, you don't know where it goes. So, and that is a valid concern. But yes, we're embracing it and using it in our practices.
Makes a lot of sense. I mean, certainly we are too, and it's a tool, like anything else. And man, in a lot of ways, it's really good at translating, English into computer code, into making things that you want, that you probably couldn't have done before. And your analogy to Chick-fil-A is really apt. In fact, on a company call yesterday, I referenced briefly, kind of the experience in going through the line at Chick-fil-A versus some of the others. And for fun, I shared a guy who was kind of spoofing a Taco Bell employee, saying, "We're gonna give me your order. I got to be to my court hearing in 20 minutes," or just silly stuff, right? But and my son has worked at Chick-fil-A for 4.5 years, and I was glad that he got the job to work there because I know there's a focus on doing and serving clients and customers better than what the run-of-the-mill experience is, in fast food. Where I live, it's 110 degrees outside and it's hot as heck, but they've got misters and the employees are out there with the iPad, like you say. They ask your name, you get right through. It's just a better experience than about anywhere else. And so, the quality can't, there and, certainly in our profession, be jeopardized by, the quantity or the speed or just the other service levels that clients also demand. And I think it's possible to have, to do everything, provided you're intentional and leveraging the tools that are available. Just like you said, you've got to be careful with some of the security, potential pitfalls with AI, but just because they exist doesn't mean they can't be overcome or lead you to a better place when, in the long run. And I think that's the future of a lot of the profession, is adopting and embracing the technology in responsible ways.
People just need to keep an open mind. And I know, again, the beginning of my conversation, change is hard. I totally get it. But if you really think about it, drive-bys used to be performed on horseback. So we've come a long way. And yeah, if a new tool comes out that helps me be more proficient or efficient, I'm going to really research that and adopt that as long as I'm in control of it, and it results in the credible assignment results that I feel comfortable with and willing to sign my name to it. So, that's the big key. If you're going to sign your name to it, you got to feel good about that final product.
Well, I think this conversation about Chick-fil-A and anyone that is obsessed with customer service, Amazon was the example, and Jeff Bezos was the example that Jeff was using in addition to Chick-fil-A yesterday on our company call. And I think it's such an opportunity in our space because appraisers are so seldom focused on that element. It is how expert they are in the value opinion and how precise that they can be in that value opinion. But I think we don't take any training on customer service or how to serve the customer well. And in fact, it feels like we settle in on a perspective that the client shouldn't want something that they do because it doesn't match what we value in the appraisal process. And this feels especially true in trying to get the non-lender work, Bryan, that you were talking about, but in all facets of the business.
Yeah, you said something there that an expert, but maybe not in, customer service. There are a tremendous amount of good appraisers out there, great appraisers that happen to be horrible business people. I was one, probably still am, but I felt like I was a decent appraiser, but I knew nothing about running a business. I was horrible at. And I went to is it B&A, I believe. I was in Cookville with a young lady, and she invited me to a B&A meeting, and I'm sitting there, and a guy got up and made a very profound statement. He said, "I can run any business. I am a businessman, and I can run any business." And Mark, I just kind of sat back in my chair and went, "You can't run an appraisal business. You're not an appraiser." And the more I started thinking about it, I thought, well, wait a minute. I know a guy back in Owensboro, and he owns a title company. He's not an attorney. And I know a guy that owns a real estate brokerage firm, and he's not a broker. I know a guy, happens to be an appraiser. I know a guy that owns a couple of Allstate agencies down in the Memphis area, and he's not an insurance agent. Yeah. So I guess this guy could form an appraisal office if he had appraisers come work for him. He could own that. And it just really hit home to me about running a business. And that we are good in valuation and solving those problems, but sometimes we're our own worst enemy in solving business related issues or thinking about growing. There's a saying, don't just work in your business, work on your business. Yeah. And I think a lot of appraisers, including me, we're guilty of working in the business and rarely working on the business. And I think historically speaking, you get your appraisal license and you hang your shingle, and maybe you go meet with some folks and your fax machine starts ringing and the orders just come in. And historically it's been pretty much that easy where the work just kind of flows in. Well, not so much over the last probably decade, right? Times have changed, and you do have to provide that customer service and what other businesses do in overall marketing.
Yeah. So, and it feels like, artificial intelligence, like the lifts that come are not just in trying to get to a more supported value that's more precise, Bryan, but it feels like these are the areas where things can really be lifted more easily, whether it's marketing, whether it's, updating customers and, all these sorts of things that are out there. I don't know. There's just a lot to manage, and it really seems like you've taken that business, the business perspective well. And I have this question running in my mind with all the different interests that you've taken on. I'm just kind of curious from an entrepreneur's perspective, how you. What is your management and day-to-day involvement in these businesses? I'm sure some more than others, but what could you say about that?
Yeah, that's a great question. The thing, Mark, I think it was Jeff Bradford, brilliant guy, said to me one time that teams outperform individuals. And I really listened to that, and I took that to heart. You want to be successful, surround yourself by successful people. Hang out. You want to be rich, hang out with rich people. You want to be fit, hang out with fit people. Have that circle around you that has been there and done it. It will help elevate you and rise you up. I don't ever want to be the smartest guy in the room. I don't have to worry about that. but my point is, I learned so much from others, even if they're not on stage teaching a class, even if they're not doing a presentation, just these conversations like this and being around smart people, I really learn a lot. So to answer your question, Mark, I will probably never's a long time. I will probably never try to run a business or operation by myself ever again. I've been there, I've done that. I talked about earlier the appraiser that couldn't take a vacation. That was eye-opening to me. I went 15 years without a vacation, and I finally took one. I went to Punta Cana, and I turned my phone off for 3 consecutive days. 3. When's the last time you turned your phone off for a day?
Yeah.
3 days. And when I turned it back on, my office manager, Sharon, called and yelled at me. But I learned 2 things on that trip. Number 1, I need more vacations. And number 2, I need to disconnect sometimes and recharge. And the team environment allows you to do that. Not just me, but all members of the team, right? So I did coaching and counseling for a firm, appraisal firm. They had 4 principals. And I said, we could really structure this to where each one of the owners could take a week off every month. Every month, have a week vacation every month. So to answer your question, yes, I'm involved in all verticals, but I have strong teammates, strong management infrastructure so that this business operates whether I'm here or not. And frankly, it probably operates better when I'm not here. So I'm here today in Owensboro, in my office here. And, we have regular meetings in all our verticals. I was in a meeting call with AL yesterday, and I'll be in a meeting call with Andy and the legacy team tomorrow. And, but thank goodness I have folks smarter than me in place to help with that. And, I think if you do things that you like and you capitalize on your strengths and let areas where you're weak, other individuals that are strong in those areas take care of those needs, it's a win-win for everyone. Because if you're doing something you like, you're going to be more productive at it. So I don't like to do accounting. I don't even want to look at that stuff. I have an accounting firm that handles that aspect of my business.
Fantastic. Wow. Yeah. That what a unexpected nugget, I think, Bryan, with you coming on. I appreciate you talking about that. It really is a unique perspective, to, I think, people that listen to this. Let's switch gears a little bit. We have Valuation Expo, August 16th through 19th, Caesars Palace, Las Vegas. This has got to be an interesting conference. And I imagine there's going to be a little bit spoken about UAD 3.6. The conference itself, the state of this transition, 3.6, with software providers, lenders, the readiness of all of it. Let's jump into that heavy topic and what you're seeing as we come into the conference.
Yeah. Val Expo is going to be huge. We say this every time, but it's surpassing all the numbers. It's going to be the biggest yet. And we have not only the conference itself, we have some pre-conference education, and we have post-conference this year. I'll be making me stay an extra day. How horrible is that? Have to stay an extra day in Vegas, but I'll be teaching USPEP. So if you haven't had your USPEP, you can stick around for that. But yeah, we have incredibly dynamic speakers and a bunch. So I've always said that if you've never been to and there's a lot of appraisers out there, Mark, that's never been to any conference. Go to a conference. What I always say is, have you ever been to a CE class and you have someone and you're just like, oh my God, I don't think I'd sit in here 8 hours and listen to this very monotone person. I'm going to, pull what little hair I have out. And then on the other hand, you may have a very dynamic speaker that you fall in love with. Well, here's the thing. And we don't have any of those boring monotone speakers, but if we did, you'd only be stuck with them for a short, because you're going to have a whole array of speakers throughout the day. Panels. We've got what we call vet talk, where we have a veteran come up and give a conversation. We have fireside chats. We're going to talk about training the next generation of appraisers, competitive edge. We'll be talking about technology a lot, including AI, coaching. We're going to talk about appraisal modernization and the new UAD 3.6. We've got Sean Murphy and Ken DeFeo. The list goes on and on and on and on. So I would recommend your viewers or listeners jump over to valuationexpo.com. You can see everything we have to offer, including the full schedule, including pre-conference and post-conference information. It's going to be a great time.
Well, having been to some, I can attest to that, Bryan. In fact, Mark and I are both going to be there as well. So it's one of those things where, we enjoy this conversation even virtually, right? But there's just nothing is the same as being together in the same room. And you really do get the opportunity to rub shoulders with some of those individuals you talked about. You see them coming and going and at lunches and stuff. You get to talk to the vendor that you use or maybe are considering, whether it's software or additional support tools or whatever, insurance providers. There's something about being together in person. And I think that, COVID really emphasized that for us, when we were all distanced, intentionally. And so it's, I've never come away from one of these conferences regretting having gone or said, man, I wish I hadn't spent the time to interact with the people that I did. It's just a great experience.
Listen, some folks have said this is more of a lender conference. We do have a lot of lenders and AMCs here, government entities, but if there's a lot of lenders there, if you're a practicing appraiser, don't you want to kind of rub elbows with a lot of the lenders who order appraisals? Back in the day, the thought of being able to walk up and speak to a representative from Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, Department of Housing and Urban Development, VA, was non-existent. You couldn't pick up the phone and get these folks. Now, a lot of folks out there might see somebody, Lyle or somebody on a podcast or maybe a webinar or something, and that's great. And maybe you get to ask questions, maybe you don't. These folks, and I'm going to just say the majority, if not all, are very approachable. If you're an attendee at this event and you want to speak to one of these folks and you can't get them, come grab me and let me see if I can make the introduction for you, because they are very, very, very approachable. And for that reason alone, I'd recommend someone coming.
That makes a ton of sense. I mean, I've gotten to know you, at these conferences, and just like you said, I mean, there are a lot of clients and people directing appraisal work and volume that you get the opportunity to meet and interact with, and and that sort of thing. And in fact, I was talking with somebody recently who was talking about, I work remote. I used to be in the office full time. Then we went to hybrid. Now I'm fully remote, and kind of like the hybrid thing where we get to interact in person, from time to time. And certainly you can do things, it's not practical if you've got employees in multiple states to be together in person all of the time. But whenever that opportunity does come up, it sure is something that is worth taking advantage of. And, gathering when people are gathering is never something that, like I said, I've regretted doing. And I think most people haven't. One of the things, and that maybe leads me a little bit to an aspect of what you have going on and had talked about that I'm curious to dive a little bit more into, and it has along the lines of gathering or working with people, but also learning and coming into the appraisal profession. You've recently are pursuing this Practicum program. Mark and I kicked off this Market Moves podcast talking, kind of doing a deep dive around PREA. What is that? Is it good, bad, or any different in the appraisal profession? We've had Melissa Bond on speaking about her Practicum course. It's a really interesting, aspect around training people. How do you make a good appraiser? That's not an easy thing to do. It certainly is doable, but it doesn't happen overnight. I'd love to hear your perspective on why get involved in a Practicum program in the first place, but what do you see as some of the advantages in going that direction?
Yeah, great question. If you think from a business owner's perspective, and I used to work for a large mortgage company, they became U.S. Bank, might have heard of them, and we always had the decision in that division: do we hire someone with experience, or do we hire someone entry level and train them the way we do things, right? And we did both. We did both on a regular basis, and we'll do both over at Legacy, right? But a lot of times someone with experience, they have a hard time letting go of the, well, this is the way I always did it, or this is the way I was taught, or this is the way I learned. And that's great. Well, we do it a little different. And sometimes it's harder to break those habits than just bringing someone new in and starting from scratch, right? We do both. We want both. We're trying to build we'd love to have a national appraisal firm. And one of the things we did, Jeff, we said, maybe we should grow our own. And so probably about that time, I talked to Melissa in San Antonio a couple of years ago. And now I had her on my podcast and learned that she was licensing her practicum. And I told my business partner, Andy, well, why should we just start from scratch if somebody's out there and they have a proven system that seems to be working and working quite well? And so that's what we've done. We've partnered up with Melissa, and we are offering, we're a provider of her practicum program. And so hers, there's a couple others out there now, but hers was the first in the nation. It's accepted by many state boards. She has a 94% first time pass rate versus a 60 some odd national average rate, which is pretty impressive. It's intense. It's almost like the traditional manner in that you do have an instructor and you do go to site visits, but it's a real intense, quick time frame. We're probably looking at about 8 months. But if you want to be, let's face it, the biggest challenge of becoming an appraiser in the United States has always been and continues to be trying to find a supervisor. That's it. And I get it. I know there's a lot of, I had a young guy call me from North Carolina. I had another young guy call me from Louisville recently. I want to be an appraiser. I can't find a supervisor. I said, well, you need to approach them a little differently. Because, if you say, I need you, well, the certified appraiser is probably going to say, well, what's in it for me? And rightfully so. I'm going to say an obligation, and it's not really an obligation, but I'm kind of putting that on myself. I think if you've been successful, if this profession has been good to you, I feel personally like I have an obligation to give back. And so one of my goals is to try to help as many certified residential appraisers or licensed become certified general before I die or retire or whatever I do. Okay. That's just something personally I'd like to help others do. And we have some pathways for that. But I'll be brutally honest with you. The reason we licensed this, we were a little selfish. We said, let's try to grow our own appraisers. And this would be a way to do it. We could put them in this practicum and get them through there. And then hopefully they would want to stay and work with our appraisal firm. And then, the more we talked about it, the more we discussed it. And we said, well, why would we close the door to anyone? I'm a big advocate for taking on trainees. I'm a big advocate for helping people get in this profession that I so dearly love. I've been quoted a few times saying, welcome to the best job on the planet, because I think this is the best job on the planet. How many jobs are out there that your client pays you for telling them what you think? I can tell you what I think all day long. Get your checkbook out, right? So I have a trainee sitting in the room next to me right now. He's a new trainee, just got his trainee license, I think last week. He's been working with us for a couple of months. I have another trainee, Jeremy Jewell, down in Nashville. He's been working with me a while. That's the traditional manner, right? Supervisor trainee. So I support that, and I have them. We have a young lady in Georgia working with us with Legacy. She's a trainee, and she's going the traditional path, and she will be probably available for her exam in October and hopefully be successful there. And she'll be a certified appraiser. And then she's going to open a little office for us in Georgia, in the Georgia market. So we're excited about that. But we decided to do Practicum to help us and to help others. It's a win-win both ways. and hopefully the folks would stick around with us. And we have opportunity. Like I say, I'm certified general in several states. And so this gets you, the practicum gets you at the license level. But we hope you stay with us and get certified res and then ultimately certified general. That's our goal. But if not, if you have the entrepreneurial incentive, if you have that mindset, you want to work for yourself and be your own boss, I'm not going to discourage anyone, guys, from doing what I've done. I think that's a hypocrite. If, you know, a lot of folks take on a trainee and they work for you, and then, you know, on down the line, they say, hey, I think I'm going to bounce over here. And they're bitter and they're mad and they hate them. Well, why are you going to hate somebody for doing exactly what you did?
Yeah.
And I get that maybe they should, you know, be loyal to you for a while and give back because you helped them get there. But it doesn't mean they need to work for you into perpetuity. I hope Kelsey stays with me into perpetuity. But if she were to decide to go do her thing next week, I'm not going to be mad at her for doing what I did.
Yeah.
So that was our decision to start this. We're excited about it. It is the impact program. We just recently got it approved in Texas, and we will be starting a fall program, and we do limit that. Right now, we're limiting it to 20. So if any of your listeners are interested or they know someone that would like to be an appraiser, it is an alternative pathway with a high level of success. We're excited about it.
Yeah, that's great. You know, we have this second exposure draft on the qualifications criteria for appraisers, and I'm curious as your thoughts and as a setup. You know, I think the Appraisal Foundation, who makes the rules for what it takes to become an appraiser and how you go about doing that, you know, they have added this PREA pathway. This practicum, I think, was there but unused for the most part, as I understand it. And
right. That's true.
You know, Bryan, this is you mentioned it at the outset here, but the challenge has been that we are this walled garden that is manned by appraisers, and they determine whether somebody can get in or not because you've got to supervise them. And I don't think that's a healthy place for the profession generally. And so I think the practicum and I think PREA help address that. I sure would like to see these things take hold and see what sort of impact they have, what kind of solutions they do provide to the industry before we go whole hog here and red mark some of the existing criteria. I wonder what your thoughts are on some of these things.
Yeah, so I just had Jeff on, and we talked about this very thing. But yeah, I'll share my opinions on that. Great setup too, Mark. And I had no idea, ladies and gentlemen, he's going to ask me this question, but I happen to have the exposure drive right here on the corner of my desk. And one of the things that they're recommending is, you know, several. I mean, they've got several proposed changes. One is to remove the college degree completely across the board. And I have mixed feelings about that. I'll be honest with you. I do have mixed feelings. I don't have a college degree. So, you know, if I was just saying, oh, this is all about me. Yeah, by God, let's make them have a master's degree. That helps me keep people from entering, you know. I don't know how I feel about it. Jeff articulated some really good reasons why maybe some level of college might be good. And I don't disagree with that. But here's what I think, Mark. I think that society tends to overreact instead of reacting. And I think, you know, if you look back to the 4-year degree as the example, didn't used to have a degree for any level of licensure. I mean, back in the day, there was no license at all, but there was no license requirement or a degree requirement to be certified general or certified res. And then what they do? Boom, almost overnight, it seemed like you have to have a bachelor's degree in anything to become a certified residential appraiser or certified general appraiser. And then what happened? They came back and said, well, they didn't say this, but maybe we overreacted is how I hear it, because they dialed back that requirement for certified res. There are 6 options, 5 in lieu of a degree. So there's alternative pathways to get a certified residential credential without having a college degree. So my position is, with these proposed changes, maybe not do away with the degree requirement completely. To me, maybe that's an overreaction. But maybe a happy medium would be, if you have 6 options for certified res, why don't we have those 6 options for certified gen? If it's working for certified res, should and my, as I said earlier, I have a goal. I'd like to get many certified res appraisers certified gen before I die. Well, guess what? The biggest obstacle? Many of them don't have a college degree. So if you gave, the 5 alternatives, that might give them another pathway. But I think the biggest proposed is the license level. They're creating a potential pathway. And again, guys, this is none of this is done, right? It's they've even expanded the comment period to August 30th, Jeff. I think it's what we figured out instead of the 31st. But is the license level. You submit your information, your coursework, and you got to meet all your normal qualification criteria, right? And then you submit sample demonstration reports, and I think they call it an AQB entity. We don't know the definition of that. We'll grade these, and if you submit these 3, Mark, and they grade them, and you get a passing score, you're a licensed appraiser with 0 experience, 0 supervision, 0 mentor, 0 practicum, 0 PREA. Congratulations, you're an appraiser. That's scary to me. And I think that's an overreaction. I think when folks say we need to open the doors, we need to find alternative pathways for folks to become an appraiser, this has created some overreaction. So, I think we can make some changes without going so far to the extreme that, again, fits in my category as an overreaction.
Hard to argue, I think, with that, because, I think as Mark said, and you've certainly emphasized, we've got more than just the supervisor pathway now, and that has been the barrier to entry for a long time. And I don't think it was intentional, but it certainly emerged as the hardest, hurdle to jump over to become an appraiser. With focused training, call it PREA or Practicum, you get proactive training on how to write a comprehensive report. I made the comment earlier, but it's not that easy to become a good, well-rounded appraiser that doesn't do silly things that don't make sense in appraisal reports. And even experienced people make mistakes and then do silly things sometimes. When I was getting designated with the Institute, I took the capstone class where, they provide some data, but there's a lot that goes into writing a demonstration report to show that you know how to do a whole bunch of different things in an appraisal. I learned a lot. It was a really hard thing, but it was a really rewarding thing. I came away for it better. I worry that potentially this just provide 3 samples gets away from the active training and guidance and coaching around writing effective, appraisal reports. And so, I think you make a good point that it's obviously out there for public comment. I would encourage anybody who has an opinion on the matter to submit the comment, because that's how we end up with the best policy anyway. But, there's a difference between proactive training and coaching and just submit something however you get it to see if it's good enough. And I've heard arguments on that side. If I can write a USPAP compliant appraisal report, why shouldn't I be able to become an appraiser? I mean, I understand where some people are coming from. Mark and I did touch on in a previous episode, we had a listener who submitted some really thoughtful, concerns around this. What if, their approach is just have somebody else ghostwrite it for them, or have AI write it for them, or and a number of things that were really well thought out. He submitted that to the AQB to be considered in this process, and we'll see where it shakes out. But I'm grateful for thoughtful comments around this.
Absolutely. And the Appraisal Foundation wants comments. I mean, they genuinely want to hear from appraisers and users of appraisal services. So I highly encourage your listeners, listen, whatever your opinion is on this, and I know you have one, because appraisers are pretty opinionated. let that opinion be heard. Write that letter or send an email to the Appraisal Foundation, because they do value your opinion, and you most certainly can make a difference. I support the supervisor trainee method. It's worked for decades. I told you I've got 2 trainees. LAC's got some trainees, so we support that. But you're limited to how many you can have, and there should be an alternative path. I mean, I recognize when I have somebody call me and say, Brian, I've called 80 appraisers and not one of them would consider taking me on. Imagine for a minute your grandkid, right? Your grandkid wants to be an appraiser. You're dead and gone. I want to do what Grandpa Mark did and Grandpa Jeff did, right? I want to do what my granddads did, and they can't find a supervisor willing to take them on. Their desire to enter a profession that their grandparent did, the door just got slammed in their face. That just seems like there should be another pathway. And there is. Perea and the Practicum. We're super excited. Folks can go to lacappraiserpathway.com for ours. It's virtual class training, about 10 to 12 hours a week. And then we have in-person site training with very experienced experts. Most of them have well over 20 years of experience. So we're not, I heard recently that someone said, well, we had somebody go through our practicum and now they're going to be a trainer for new entries in the practicum. And we're not going to do that. I'm not going to take someone that just got their license and have them training other folks in our practicum program. Like I said, most of our in-person site visits will be with experts in excess of 20 years, maybe 30 years of experience. So we're pretty excited about it.
Well, on that topic or on that note, you mentioned earlier, if you want to be fit, hang out with fit people. If you want to be wealthy, hang out with wealthy people. I want to be positive and optimistic about the future of where things are going. And to that end, it's worth hanging out with and interacting with people that are looking for ways to find an effective, a positive, a profitable and productive way forward in the appraisal profession and the real estate profession. And I think you embody that, Brian, with the conversation and your outlook, with what's to come. Sure, it's not going to be what it was, yesterday, and I think that's okay. But we really appreciate you making as much time as you have to come on and share your positive outlook on the profession and where it's going. I know you frequent all of the upcoming events, but if people wanted to either get connected with you in an event or online, how's the best way to do that?
Oh gosh, multiple emails. Probably, if you're wanting information about the practicum, go over to lacappraiserpathway.com. There is a tab there to reach out to some of our folks. I'll give you a couple of other emails real quick. They're very easy. info@lacappraiserpathway.com. My email over at Legacy is brian@thelegacyag.com. You could do Kelly or Andy. Kelly's the administrator of that program. Andy's a business partner. Of course, for Appraiser e-learning, brian@appraiserelearning.com. And you can also check out Reynolds and Associates website. There's a link there to contact us as well. If you need coaching or consulting, we do that. And I want to just say in Legacy, we are providing coaching and mentorship over there as well. And I've talked about this real quick and I want to plug it. If you are an appraiser and you're ready to retire, maybe UAD 3.6 is the final straw. And I've met some. What's your exit strategy? Are you going to turn the light off, close the door, and just be done? I mean, all these years you've worked for this, you're just going to turn the light off, close the door, and be done? Call us. Give me a call. I'm going to give you my cell phone, 270-929-3088. If that's you, if you're seriously considering doing that, please call me. We may have an exit strategy for you where you can make money in retirement and it keeps your legacy alive. I'd love to talk to you if you're thinking of doing that.
On the theme of, positivity going forward, I think there are creative ways to start up in the appraisal profession, to be successful through the appraisal profession, to exit the appraisal profession, for sure. And so appreciate that perspective. Would encourage people to reach out if if you fit any of the categories that Brian's described, which is about A to Z as far as that goes. But Brian, just a big thank you for taking the time to be here with us. It's Mark and I aspire to speak with interesting people. You certainly are one, so we appreciate you being here with us today.
Well, thank you guys, Mark, Jeff. Keep doing what you're doing. You're doing fantastic. I'm a fan, and I can't wait to have you both back on my program as well.
Very good. Well,
yeah,
tell
Brian, boy, a phrase in my mind is coming during this conversation is that there's advantage and optimism, I think, and particularly in and around our space, because there's so much pessimism. It just means that solutions are needed, and you seem to be bringing a lot, thinking creatively and innovatively. So thank you for the time here. Look forward to seeing you at Val Expo in Las Vegas, and we'll talk again soon.
Very good. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, Brian.